The moment she walked through the door, I felt my chest tighten. I knew her face, her eyes, her smile. The smell of roasted chicken filled the living room, warm and comforting, mixing with the faint hint of rosemary I had rubbed into the skin earlier. It was supposed to be a normal Sunday. My son had been laughing from the kitchen, his voice bouncing off the walls, carefree in a way I hadn't heard since he was a boy. The kind of laughter that used to make me smile without thinking. But when the front door creaked open and I turned my head, my entire body stiffened. She stepped in behind him, Sonia. The air seemed to thicken. My fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the plate with a sharp metallic echo that cut through the room. My chest locked up, my pulse beating fast in my throat. For a second, I couldn't breathe. She hadn't changed much. The same almond-shaped eyes that once watched me in the quiet of another city. The same smile that had convinced me, long ago, to trust her with my secrets. She was older now, sure. There were faint lines around her mouth, but her presence carried the same force. A presence I thought I'd never see again. "Dad," my son said, his grin wide, his eyes full of pride. "This is Sonia, my girlfriend." I froze. The sound of her name twisted the knife in deeper. "Girlfriend?" I managed, though my throat was dry, my voice thinner than I wanted. She looked at me, and for the briefest second I saw it, the corner of her lips twitching, a faint smirk she quickly hid beneath a mask of politeness. She knew. She knew exactly what she was doing standing there. "Hello, Mr. Khan," she said smoothly, her voice like velvet stretched over steel. "It's such a pleasure to finally meet you." Her tone was soft, almost formal, but her eyes lingered on me, unblinking. They weren't the eyes of a stranger. They were the eyes of someone who knew me intimately, someone who had once whispered promises in the dark and left scars I carry to this day. Inside my head, memories clashed like broken glass. Our wedding night in a cramped apartment, her laughter echoing in a narrow alley. The day she disappeared without a word, leaving me with questions I buried so deep I thought they'd never surface again. Now, here she was, standing in my home, holding my son's hand. My son's voice jolted me back. "Dad? You okay?" I swallowed hard, trying to mask the tremor in my hands by gripping my napkin. "Yes," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Just surprised." "Surprised?" Sonia tilted her head slightly, her expression calm but her eyes sharp, testing. "Yes," I said again, my voice firmer this time. "I wasn't expecting." I stopped myself, teeth pressing together. "I wasn't expecting to see you alive. I wasn't expecting you to come back into my life like this." Her gaze softened just enough to fool anyone else, but not me. I saw the calculation there. She was measuring me, waiting to see if I would break. My son laughed, oblivious. He wrapped an arm around her shoulder and squeezed. "Dad, meet the love of my life." The room seemed to tilt. My stomach lurched. The smell of roasted chicken, once warm, now felt suffocating, greasy in my nose. My hands itched to throw the plate across the room, to drag him away, to shout the truth. But I didn't. Because if I spoke now, if I revealed what I knew, it wouldn't just destroy me, it would destroy him. And Sonia knew it. She held my gaze a second longer, the ghost of that smirk flickering again. Silent, waiting. My son's words echoed in my skull, heavy and final. "Dad, meet the love of my life." My hands trembled as I raised my glass, pretending everything was fine, while a ghost from my past sat across from me. The wine tasted like iron. It was supposed to be a celebration, a family dinner, my son's proud introduction of his girlfriend. But the moment she stepped inside, I felt the air collapse around me. Sonia. She was smiling, laughing at Daniel's jokes, tucking her hair behind her ear like she had never disappeared from my life. The years between us seemed to dissolve in the clink of cutlery. My skin prickled as I watched her, every memory clawing its way up. Our wedding night, her hand in mine trembling with promises, the bitter arguments, the slammed doors, and then, the silence of abandonment. No note, no body, just absence. Now here she was, sitting across from me, her fork moving with practiced grace. Daniel caught me staring. "Dad? You okay? You've barely touched your food." I forced a cough, a laugh. "Fine. Just a little tired, that's all." But I wasn't fine. Sonia tilted her head, her lips curving into a smile that never reached her eyes. She was studying me, dissecting me, the way a hawk studies prey before swooping down. Her fingers toyed with the silver bracelet on her wrist, the one I had given her as a gift on our first anniversary. I knew that bracelet like I knew my own hands. She wanted me to notice. Daniel, oblivious, kept talking, telling her about his promotion, about plans for a future that made my chest seize. A future with her. My son was planning a future with the woman who had been my wife. Every scrape of the cutlery felt amplified. The ticking of the clock on the wall hammered in my skull. Sonia's laughter threaded through it all, sweet but sharp, every note carrying a hidden blade. "You've really outdone yourself with this meal," Sonia said finally, turning her eyes on me. "It's just like I remember." I froze. Remember? Daniel glanced between us. "Wait, you two have met before?" My tongue felt heavy. My mind raced. A dozen lies flickered and died. "No," I said quickly. Too quickly. "She just means, it's familiar, that's all." Sonia leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. "Yes, very familiar." Her gaze locked onto mine, unblinking, daring me to expose the truth. I could see the faint twitch at the corner of her mouth, the micro-expression of someone enjoying the game far too much. I forced myself to smile back, but inside, I was unraveling. I thought about the last time I saw her, the way she left me hollow, the way I searched, the police reports, the whispered accusations from neighbors, that I had driven her away, that maybe I had done worse. And now she was here, sharing dinner with my son. Daniel excused himself to grab dessert, leaving us alone for the briefest moment. Sonia's hand brushed the stem of her wine glass, circling it slowly, deliberately. "Still drinking Merlot, I see," she murmured. My throat went dry. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered, keeping my eyes on the tablecloth. "Oh, but I should." Her voice was low, velvet, and steel. "You knew I'd come back eventually, didn't you?" The sound of Daniel's footsteps returning saved me from answering. I shoved down the storm inside me and plastered a smile on my face. We finished dinner with words that felt like ash in my mouth. Sonia laughed at every story, touched Daniel's arm as though she'd always belonged there, all while never breaking her stare with me. Each glance was a reminder. She wasn't here by accident. When the plates were cleared, I pushed back my chair, needing air before I suffocated. "Excuse me," I muttered, standing. I barely made it to the kitchen when I heard the soft creak of footsteps behind me. My pulse quickened. Sonia slipped in through the doorway, the shadows bending around her. She leaned close, her breath warm against my ear. "Did you miss me?" she whispered. My heart slammed against my ribs, and in that moment, I realized dinner was only the beginning. Forever. The steady clicking of the ceiling fan was unbearable. Tick, pause, tick, as if it were mocking me with each rotation. Every sound in the house felt amplified, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the creak of wood settling, even my own shallow breathing. Sleep was impossible. Instead, memories rose like ghosts. I remembered the first time I met Sonia. She swept into my life like a storm, fiery, unpredictable, magnetic. She had that dangerous kind of charm that made you ignore every red flag because you were blinded by the intensity of her gaze. She made me feel like the only man in the room, and I clung to that feeling. We married in secret, in a courthouse that smelled of mildew and cheap carnations. The judge barely looked up as we signed our names, but to me it felt monumental. Sonia's hand trembled when she slid the ring onto my finger, and her smile had a flicker of something, fear or hesitation, that I dismissed as nerves. I told myself she loved me, that I was enough. But love with Sonia was never steady. It was fire and ash. The arguments came quickly, starting small, late nights, missed calls, unexplained absences. She'd laugh them off at first. "You're imagining things," she'd say, brushing my suspicion away with a kiss. But her phone would buzz at midnight, and she'd vanish into another room to whisper. I'd press her for answers, and she'd explode, accusing me of suffocating her. Then she'd soften, eyes glassy with crocodile tears, begging for forgiveness. It was a cycle, and I was trapped in it. I rolled onto my side, staring at the shadow of the dresser, and my chest tightened at the memory of the night she disappeared. I woke up to an empty bed. Her clothes were gone, the closet stripped bare. No note, no goodbye. Just silence that stretched on for years. I'd searched everywhere. Police, missing person reports, dead ends. Neighbors whispered. Some pitied me. Others suggested I'd driven her away. Some even muttered darker suspicions, that maybe I had done something to her. I lived under that cloud for years, wearing it like a second skin. And now she was back. Not just back, wrapped around my son's arm, laughing with him in my dining room as if the past never existed. The thought made bile rise in my throat. I pressed the heel of my hand against my chest, trying to calm the storm inside me. I couldn't tell Daniel yet. How could I? Your girlfriend is my wife. The words alone felt unreal. He'd look at me like I was insane. And maybe Sonia had counted on that. She knew me well enough to understand I wouldn't risk alienating him without proof. She had the upper hand, for now. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned, replaying every argument, every lie, every flicker of manipulation. The way she twisted truths, the way she used silence as a weapon. And now she was using Daniel. For what, I didn't know. But I knew Sonia. She didn't do anything without motive. The clicking fan grew louder, syncing with my heartbeat. I sat up, the sheets tangled around my legs, my skin damp with sweat. I thought about the bracelet she wore at dinner, the one I gave her. She hadn't just kept it. She flaunted it. She wanted me to remember. She wanted me to squirm. Why? I rubbed my temples, forcing myself to breathe. My thoughts spiraled into paranoia. Did she plan this years ago? Did she vanish only to return like this, to tear apart what was left of my life? I couldn't make sense of it. Not yet. But I had to understand before she destroyed everything. I didn't even realize I'd dozed off until the pale light of dawn crept across the ceiling. My head pounded, my body heavy with unrest. I swung my legs out of bed and froze. There was something on the floor. A folded piece of paper, slipped under my door. My hands shook as I picked it up. The paper was thin, almost translucent in the morning light. I unfolded it slowly, my chest tightening with every second. 3 words, written in Sonia's unmistakable handwriting. You owe me. My breath caught in my throat. Whatever game she was playing, it had just begun. My blood ran cold as I held the crumpled note in my hands. Her handwriting, sharp and unmistakable. 3 words stared back at me, venom dripping from every letter. You owe me. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the paper shaking between my fingers. The letters weren't just words, they were a blade, pressed against my throat. My mind raced. What did she mean? What debt? Why now, after years of silence? I shoved the note into my nightstand drawer as I heard Daniel's knock on the door. Dad? You up? Breakfast's ready. My voice cracked, but I forced it steady. Yeah. Be right down. When I walked into the kitchen, Sonia was already there, standing barefoot by the counter, pouring coffee into mugs as though she belonged in my house. She looked up and smiled, her eyes glittering with a private joke. Daniel sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, completely oblivious. Morning, Dad, he said, not looking up. Sleep okay? Fine. I lied, sliding into the chair. Just a little restless. Sonia moved toward me, placing a mug in front of me. Her hand brushed mine for the briefest moment, deliberate, lingering. My skin burned where she touched me. She tilted her head, lips curving into that same mocking smile she'd worn the night before. Coffee's just the way you like it, she said softly, almost too softly for Daniel to hear. I froze, staring at her. She remembered. After all these years, she remembered. I sipped, pretending nothing was wrong. But inside, panic spread like wildfire. What was she doing here? What strings was she pulling? Daniel looked up finally, grinning at her. Isn't she amazing, Dad? It's like she already knows the routine around here. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Yeah, amazing. But my eyes kept dropping to the silver bracelet on her wrist. She was twirling it again, the way she always did when she was plotting something. I knew that tick too well. A silent signal. A reminder. She caught me watching and smirked before turning her attention back to Daniel. I tried to corner her twice that day. Once in the hallway, once when Daniel stepped into the garage. Both times, she slipped away like smoke. You're avoiding me. I hissed the second time, blocking her path. She leaned in close, her perfume, sweet, cloying, suffocating, filling my lungs. Not avoiding, she whispered. Just waiting for the right moment. Then she laughed lightly, brushing past me, as though nothing had been said. Daniel returned before I could press further, and the moment was gone. The hours dragged on, each one heavier than the last. My nerves frayed with every glance she threw my way, every playful touch she gave my son. She was weaving herself deeper into his life, and I could do nothing without proof. That night, I sat at the dinner table, barely tasting the food. Daniel was talking about work, his voice animated, but I couldn't focus. My eyes kept flicking to Sonia, who sat across from me, lips painted red, smile fixed like a mask. Halfway through, she reached for the salt. Her fingers brushed Daniel's, and they both laughed. But when her eyes met mine, her smile faltered just enough for me to see it, the sharp edge beneath the performance. I tightened my grip on my fork, my knuckles white. She was baiting me, daring me to break. After dinner, Daniel excused himself to take a call. Sonia leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs slowly, deliberately. Her foot tapped against the floor in a rhythm that set my teeth on edge. "You look pale," she said, her voice dripping with mock concern. "Old ghosts keeping you awake?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because in that moment I realized she was enjoying this, every second of it. Later that evening, as the house quieted and shadows deepened across the walls, I felt a presence at my side. Robert, my brother-in-law, stepped close, his voice low, almost a growl. "I know her," he muttered, his eyes locked on Sonia. My heart stuttered. Finally, proof. Or maybe, another layer of danger. Robert's face went pale when he saw Sonia, and the tremor in his voice made my skin crawl. It wasn't the kind of reaction you could fake. His glass was halfway to his lips, but he froze, eyes locked on her as if she just walked out of his nightmares. His jaw tightened, and I could see the faint twitch in his temple, the one that always gave him away when he was hiding something. I leaned back, pretending not to notice, but inside my chest my heart started to hammer. After dinner, as Sonia disappeared into the kitchen with Daniel to help with dishes, Robert brushed past me. His breath reeked of whiskey as he muttered, "Outside, now." I followed him to the porch, the night air cold against my skin. The cicadas droned in the distance, their steady rhythm only making the silence between us heavier. Robert lit a cigarette with shaking hands, the flame trembling against the wind. "You know her?" I asked, keeping my voice low. He didn't look at me, just dragged in smoke, exhaled hard, and whispered, "Yeah, I know her." The way he said it, flat, hollow, like the words themselves carried a weight he didn't want to touch, sent a shiver crawling up my spine. "From where?" I pressed. Robert finally turned his head, eyes glassy but sharp, the kind of look a man gets when he's dredging up things he's tried to bury. "Different city. Years ago. She was involved. With people you don't want to cross." I frowned. "Involved how?" He flicked ash into the dark, jaw working as if he had to chew the words before spitting them out. "Money. A lot of it. Stolen. And a man, he just disappeared. No trace. People said he ran, but I didn't believe it. Not after I saw her with him the week before. She had that same smile, the one she's flashing in there right now. Like she already knew the ending before it happened." My stomach twisted, bile creeping up my throat. The memory of Sonia's smirk earlier, the way she looked at me as if she were 2 steps ahead, suddenly felt sharper, more dangerous. "You're saying she..." "I'm saying," Robert cut me off, his voice rough, "that you keep your boy away from her. Whatever game she's playing, it won't end well. For anyone." I stared at him, trying to piece together his words. Part of me wanted to believe him. The fear in his eyes wasn't fake. I'd known him too long to miss that. But Robert had his own history of lies, his own debts and excuses, and there was always the chance this was another one of them. I narrowed my eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" His hand tightened around the cigarette until the ash bent and fell. "Because I saw the way she looked at him, at Daniel. That's not affection, that's possession." He leaned closer, breath hot and bitter with liquor. "And because I've seen the wreckage she leaves behind." I swallowed hard, throat dry. The porch boards creaked under my shifting weight. Every word dug into me, but the doubt lingered. Robert was a drunk, a liar when it suited him. But he wasn't a good actor. And right now, he looked terrified. "Jesus, Robert," I muttered. He didn't answer. Just ground the cigarette out on the railing and muttered, "Watch her. She's not who she says she is." Behind us, the screen door creaked open. My blood iced as I turned and saw her, Sonia, framed in the doorway, a dish towel in her hands. Her eyes flicked from Robert to me, and her smile stretched wider. "You two look serious," she said, her voice light, teasing. "Plotting something without me?" Robert stiffened, his jaw locking tight. I forced a laugh, though it scraped raw in my throat. "Just catching up. You know how family is." Her gaze lingered on us for a moment too long before she stepped back inside, the door slamming shut behind her. Robert exhaled shakily. "She knows." The words rattled around my skull long after he stumbled back to his car. That night, as the house settled into uneasy silence, I sat in my room, replaying Robert's warning, the stolen money, the man who vanished, Sonia's smile. I wanted to dismiss it as drunken paranoia, but the memory of her hand brushing mine at breakfast, the deliberate way she twisted that bracelet, the way she had been weaving herself deeper into Daniel's life, it all clicked into something darker. My thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at my door. "Dad?" Daniel's voice, hesitant, careful. I shoved my chair back and opened the door. He stood there in the dim light, shoulders tense, eyes searching my face. He took a breath, then asked quietly, "Dad, why do you hate Sonia?" His eyes burned into me, demanding an explanation I couldn't give without shattering everything. Daniel stood in my doorway, arms crossed, shoulders squared. He looked older in that moment, harder, like the boy I raised had been replaced with a man who didn't trust me anymore. "Something's going on," he said flatly. "And don't tell me it's nothing. I see it. The silences, the way you look at her, the way she looks at you." My throat tightened. My instinct was to deny, to brush it off, but my son wasn't a child anymore. He wasn't going to be distracted by half-truths. "Daniel," I started, but the words snagged in my chest. How could I tell him that Sonia was once mine? That she vanished and left me broken? That she wasn't safe? That she wasn't who he thought she was? "I want the truth," he pressed, stepping closer. His fists were clenched, his jaw rigid, his eyes flickered with both anger and fear. "Why do you hate her?" Hate. The word cut deep. I didn't hate her, not in the way he thought. What I felt was something darker, heavier, twisted between desire and dread. I rubbed my forehead, trying to steady my voice. "It's complicated." He let out a bitter laugh. "That's all you've got? Complicated?" Before I could form another excuse, Sonia appeared in the hall. She moved silently, barefoot, her shadow stretching across the floor before her. Her expression was soft, almost fragile, but her eyes gleamed with something sharp. "What's happening?" she asked gently, tilting her head, playing innocent. Daniel turned toward her instantly, as if her presence dissolved the anger in his chest. "Dad's being weird," he muttered. She slipped beside him, her hand brushing his arm, her head tilting just enough to rest against his shoulder. "A practice move. A performance. Maybe," she whispered, her lips close to his ear, but loud enough for me to hear. "He just doesn't want to see you happy." The words slid into the room like a knife. Daniel's jaw tightened again, but this time his suspicion wasn't pointed at her, it was pointed at me. "Is that it?" he asked, voice low, steady. "You don't want me to be happy?" I froze. Sonia's eyes flicked to mine, her smile tightening, just for a fraction of a second. She was savoring this, every second of it. My chest ached. I wanted to grab him, shake him, tell him everything. Tell him about her past, about Robert's warning, about the nights I still woke up in a cold sweat because of her. But if I said it all now, would he believe me? Or would it sound like the ramblings of a bitter old man trying to destroy his son's love? "Daniel," I said quietly, forcing the words out, "I don't hate her, but I need you to be careful." "Careful?" His laugh was sharp, humorless. "Careful of what? She's been nothing but kind to me. She cares about me. His voice cracked, and he looked away, swallowing hard. "You don't get to decide this, Dad. Not again." The last two words hit like a hammer. Not again. He was thinking of all the times I'd stepped in, steered his choices, tried to protect him from mistakes he didn't believe were mistakes. And Sonia knew it. She stroked his arm lightly, her expression one of quiet sympathy, but her eyes never left mine. That smile never faltered. "I should go," she murmured. "This is between you two." But she didn't move. She stood there, letting the tension strangle me. Daniel finally turned and walked past me, brushing my shoulder harder than necessary. "I'll figure it out myself," he said. The door to his room slammed shut, the sound echoing through the hall. Sonia lingered for a moment longer, her lips curving into that slow, knowing grin. Then she followed him, her footsteps light, unhurried. I stood alone in the dark hallway, the weight of his suspicion crushing me. For the first time, I felt the walls closing in, not just around me, but between me and my own child. Hours later, as the house slept, I wandered restlessly, my nerves raw. That's when I heard it, the soft click of a door outside. I peered through the blinds just in time to see Sonia slipping into Robert's car. I followed her through the shadows, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. The night had teeth, sharp and cold, biting into my skin as I trailed behind Sonia. The driveway smelled faintly of gasoline, a raw sting that clung to the air. Robert's car idled at the curb, headlights dimmed, engine growling low like a predator waiting to pounce. Sonia glanced once over her shoulder, not at me, but as if savoring the performance of secrecy, before slipping inside. I forced myself to wait 2 breaths, then climbed into my car. The engine's hum felt deafening. I followed them at a cautious distance, every red light stretching the tension tighter inside my chest. My palms were slick on the wheel. The city emptied as we drove deeper into the industrial edge, where the streetlights were few and the buildings stood like silent witnesses. They finally pulled into an abandoned parking lot, the kind that smelled of rust, oil, and loneliness. A single street lamp buzzed overhead, its light flickering in irregular spasms, carving their figures into shadow and gold. I killed my headlights, rolled the window down an inch, and leaned into the silence. Robert was already out of the car, his body stiff, his pacing restless. Sonia stepped out slowly, deliberate, her movements measured like a dancer timing each beat. She closed the door softly, not with the urgency of someone afraid of being caught, but with the calm of someone in complete control. "Money!" Robert hissed, his voice carrying just enough for me to catch. His hands flexed and tightened at his sides. "You promised proof." Sonia tilted her head, her red skirt catching the wind, her smile barely there. "Patience, Robert. You'll get what you need. But you don't rush me." He stepped closer, his face flushed with fury even from a distance. His fists trembled. "He doesn't know," he spat, his voice sharp enough to slice the night. Her reply was softer, almost soothing. "Exactly. And that's why you're safe. For now." The streetlight flickered, plunging them into half-darkness, then back into light. In that stuttering glow, I saw it, Robert's desperation, Sonia's calm superiority. He looked like a man drowning, clutching for air. She looked like the one holding his head under water. I pressed harder into the steering wheel, my breath shallow. "Money. Proof. He doesn't know." The fragments rattled around my skull, each one cutting deeper. Were they blackmailing me? Using me? Or worse, was Robert never on my side at all? Robert's pacing grew more frantic, his movements jerky, almost panicked. He rubbed the back of his neck, then leaned in close to Sonia, his mouth tight. "You're going to ruin everything," he whispered harshly. She leaned back slightly, her hands behind her, casual, relaxed. "No, Robert. I'm going to fix everything." Her tone was silk, but her eyes glinted like knives. He swore under his breath and turned away, his shoulders rigid, his breath fogging in the cold night. Sonia, however, noticed me. It was only for a second, a flicker of her eyes in my direction, like a knife's glint catching moonlight. My heart stuttered. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't even hesitate. Instead, she smiled, a slow, knowing curl of her lips. Then, in one smooth, deliberate move, she leaned toward Robert and pressed her lips slightly against his cheek. Not tender, not affectionate, mocking. The kiss wasn't for him, it was for me. I jerked back in my seat, a sick twist in my stomach. She had seen me. She wanted me to see. Robert shoved her back slightly, muttering something I couldn't hear. His anger was raw, desperate. But Sonia's face, her face was calm. Too calm. Moments later, she slid back into the car, the engine roaring to life. Robert stood frozen under the flickering light, his face pale, his hands clenched into trembling fists. I stayed rooted to the spot, watching as she drove off into the night. Robert didn't follow. He stood there like a man who had just lost a game he didn't realize he was playing. My mind spun, tangled in the contradictions. Had Robert been warning me, or manipulating me from the start? Was Sonia playing him too? Or were they both playing me? Nothing made sense anymore. The truths I thought I knew unraveled into lies, and every thread I pulled only tightened the noose around my sanity. When I finally stumbled back home, dawn was bleeding into the sky, pale and unforgiving. My body felt hollow, my eyes burned with exhaustion, and then I saw it, tucked neatly into my mailbox, waiting like a snake in the grass, was an old photograph. A photograph of Sonia and me. My hand shook as I held the faded photograph, proof of our past, proof she wanted my son to see. The edges were curled, worn soft from years of neglect, but the image was unmistakable. Sonia in that cheap white dress, lace snagged and uneven, her smile too wide to be real. Me beside her, stiff in a borrowed suit, pretending I wasn't already questioning everything. We were young, foolish, blind. And now, decades later, here it was again, dragged from the grave to haunt me. I flipped it over. Bold red ink carved a warning across the back. "Tell him, or I will." The words pulsed like fresh blood. My stomach churned. The note wasn't for me. It was a death sentence aimed at Daniel. The sound of footsteps in the hall jolted me. Daniel's voice was casual, oblivious. "Dad? You in there?" I nearly dropped the picture. My heart slammed against my ribs as I shoved the photo into my pocket just before the door swung open. Daniel leaned against the frame, smiling faintly. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Just tired, I lied, forcing a cough. My throat was so dry it scraped. He studied me longer than usual, his eyes narrowing slightly. That suspicion again. The cracks in my mask were widening, and Sonia was the one prying them apart. You sure? He asked, his tone softer now, almost concerned. Positive, I said too quickly. My hand brushed against my pocket, feeling the sharp edge of the photo digging into my thigh. I prayed he wouldn't notice. When he left, I sat back down, my legs trembling. The bracelet, the notes, now the photograph. Each piece wasn't just a threat, they were a countdown, a twisted clock ticking louder every day. She wanted me cornered. She wanted me voiceless. The days stretched on like a noose tightening around my neck. Sonia moved through the house with practiced ease, touching Daniel's shoulder when she passed, laughing lightly at his jokes, placing her hand on his arm just long enough to claim him as hers. Every gesture was calculated, every smile a dagger. At dinner, I could barely swallow. The roast tasted of ash in my mouth. Sonia caught my eye across the table, then lowered her gaze to Daniel beside her. She reached out, brushing her fingers over his hand. His cheeks flushed. My chest constricted. You've really outdone yourself tonight, she said sweetly, though her eyes stayed on me. Daniel chuckled. Told you she's amazing, Dad. I forced a smile, though Bob burned in my throat. She wasn't amazing, she was dismantling me, piece by piece, and he couldn't see it. Afterward I escaped to my room, locking the door behind me. My hand shook as I pulled the photograph back out. The ink seemed darker now, the letters heavier. Tell him or I will. My silence had always been my shield, but now it was the rope tightening around my neck. I heard Daniel's footsteps outside, heading to bed. The house went still. Only the tick of the hallway clock filled the silence, steady, merciless. I slid the photo into my drawer, burying it beneath old receipts and forgotten keys. My chest ached as I pushed the drawer shut, as though hiding it could delay the inevitable. But I should have known better. That evening, as I poured myself a glass of water in the kitchen, I heard it, the faint scrape of a drawer sliding open upstairs. My stomach dropped. Dad? Daniel's voice called down, but it wasn't casual this time. It was sharp, heavy. I climbed the stairs, every step slower than the last. When I reached my room, he was already standing there, the photograph pinched between his fingers, his face pale, his jaw clenched, his eyes locked on me. The back of the photo faced me. The words in red ink screamed across the space between us. Tell him, Daniel read aloud, his voice breaking, or I will. And for the first time, I couldn't breathe. His voice shook with rage as he shoved the photograph into my chest. What the hell is this, Dad? The picture crumpled against me, the red ink screaming from the back like an accusation carved in blood. Daniel's hands trembled, his knuckles white, his jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might snap. His eyes, my son's eyes, were wide with fury and betrayal. I froze. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. My chest felt caged, every breath strangled. Behind him, Sonia lingered in the doorway, her lips parted just slightly, her brows knitted in a perfect mask of shock, her hands twisted together at her waist, fragile, saintly. She was good. Too good. Daniel, let me explain. Explain? His laugh was sharp, brittle. Explain what? That you've been hiding this from me my whole life? That you and her, his voice cracked. That this is real? I reached for the photo, but he yanked it back. Don't touch it. My throat burned. Yes, it's real. Years ago, before you were even born, she and I. Stop. His face flushed scarlet, the vein at his temple pulsing. You expect me to believe this now? After everything? After the way you've treated her? I treated her? My voice rose, desperation breaking through. Daniel, you don't know who she is. You don't know what she's capable of. Sonia's soft gasp filled the room, delicate as glass breaking. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. Please, don't blame your father. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he's confused. She clutched his arm gently, her fingers tightening like claws. I don't want to come between you two. Her words dripped innocence, but her eyes never left mine. Cold, triumphant. Daniel pulled her closer, shielding her like she was the one who needed protection. Don't you dare talk to her like that. Don't you dare. She's lying to you, I shouted. My own voice sounded foreign, cracked with panic. She vanished. She abandoned me. She's been playing both of us. Robert? Robert? Daniel snapped. Now you're dragging other people into this? You're jealous. That's all this is. You can't stand that I found someone good. Good? I whispered. My hands shook, palms open. Daniel, she's… Enough! His roar silenced the air between us. I don't want to hear another word. You're pathetic. Do you know that? Jealous, bitter, controlling. His eyes glistened, but the fury held them steady. Sonia's hand slid up his arm, her thumb brushing circles against his sleeve. She sniffled softly, a tear balancing on her lashes. It's okay, she whispered, voice breaking just enough to sound believable. He's just scared. I don't blame him. Every word was poison, and Daniel drank it like it was salvation. My knees nearly buckled. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to tear the mask off her face and force him to see. But every attempt, every word, only shoved him closer into her arms. I'm telling you the truth, I said, my voice barely above a whisper now. I swear to you, Daniel, she's not who you think she is. He looked at me then, really looked at me, his lip trembling. For half a second, I thought he'd break, that he'd see, that he'd remember who raised him, who had been there all his life. But Sonia leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear. Her whisper was soft, but deliberate, just loud enough for me to hear. He's dangerous. The words sliced through me. Daniel stiffened, his jaw locking, his eyes hardening into something colder than I'd ever seen before. He took a step back, pulling her with him, keeping me at a distance as though I were the threat. My heart dropped into the pit of my stomach. In that instant, I realized I hadn't just lost the argument. I was losing my son. Enough was enough. I had to expose her, even if it meant destroying myself in the process. The dining room smelled of roasted lamb and burning candles, the flickering flames casting jagged shadows across the walls. I had invited Robert, Daniel, and Sonia, masking my fury with a practiced calm. The table was pristine, silverware aligned, glasses catching the candlelight, but underneath it all, tension hummed like a live wire. I poured wine for Daniel, careful to meet his eyes without flinching. Sonia's gaze never left mine, an unbroken stare that chilled me. Robert sat across, stiff-backed, unease curling his fingers around the stem of his glass. Dinner looks amazing, Sonia said, voice syrupy, all sweetness, no warmth. She leaned just slightly toward Daniel, brushing her shoulder against his. Innocent? Perhaps. Calculated? Absolutely. I swallowed. I wanted tonight to be normal. But there's something you all need to see. I set a folder on the table. Bank records, police files, old aliases Sonia had used, proof of the life she had hidden from everyone. Daniel's fork froze midair. Robert's hand tightened around his napkin. Sonia smiled, slow, deliberate, the kind of smile that makes your stomach turn. You've been waiting for this, haven't you? I said, voice low. All the little games, the bracelet, the notes, the photograph, everything leads here. Sonia tilted her head, lips curling. I've been waiting, yes. Waiting for you to finally admit what you did to me. I clenched my fists, trying not to react to the taunt buried in that single sentence. The table was suddenly smaller, the candlelight oppressive. My own breath felt heavy in my chest. Daniel's voice trembled. What is all this? It's proof, I said, sliding a stack of papers toward him. Proof that Sonia isn't who she says she is. That she's been manipulating everyone, your father included. Sonia laughed softly, a delicate, chilling sound. Manipulating? Or revealing truths you were too scared to face? She leaned back, fingers steepled. I knew you'd bring this moment, and now you're finally playing my game. Robert's jaw tightened. Is this true? Yes, I hissed. Every word. Every file. Look at the records, the police documents, the aliases, her lies, her disappearance. She's dangerous. Sonia's expression didn't waver. She leaned in close, whispering, almost conspiratorially, yet loud enough for all to hear. I told you I've been waiting. Her eyes glimmered with ice. Daniel swallowed hard, his face pale. He glanced at Sonia, then at me, confusion and betrayal twisting his features. The fork clattered onto the plate. I tried to meet his gaze. Daniel, you need to see her for who she really is. She's… His words faltered, his voice breaking. His hands fisted on the table. Sonia's eyes glittered, amused, as if watching a puppet finally understand its strings. You wanted proof? Here it is. And you wanted to expose me? Perfect. You've done exactly what I hoped you would. Then she slid a small device onto the table, almost imperceptibly. I froze. She pressed play. The room filled with a chilling recording. My own voice, taken from private conversations, stitched together to sound like I was admitting to things I hadn't done. Daniel's eyes widened, horror etched across his face. Robert's hands went slack at his sides. I felt a cold sweat run down my spine. Every careful step I had taken to reveal the truth had been anticipated, twisted, weaponized. Sonia leaned back, eyes glinting in the candlelight. See? Even your best intentions can be turned against you. Isn't it wonderful when the hunter becomes the hunted? I swallowed hard, every nerve screaming, as Daniel stared at me, his confusion, his doubt, his fear of me, all meticulously planted by her. And in that instant, I realized the trap wasn't just the dinner. The trap was me, caught in her game for the very last time. My own voice filled the room, distorted, cruel, confessing to sins I didn't remember committing. The recording rattled from the small device Sonia had left on the table, each word a jagged dagger. My voice, sharp and cold, threatened her years ago, accused her of crimes I couldn't recall. The words weren't mine, or at least, I couldn't recognize them. My stomach twisted, my palms slick with sweat as I realized how convincing it sounded. Daniel's eyes were wide, disbelief written on every line of his face. Dad, what is this? I opened my mouth to explain, but the words stumbled out like rubble. My mind raced. Had it been altered? Manipulated? Or had I really been capable of saying such things? Sonia leaned back in her chair, every movement deliberate, savoring my unraveling. A soft, satisfied smile ghosted across her lips. She didn't flinch, didn't falter. She had predicted this moment down to the heartbeat. Robert's voice cut through the thick tension. Explain. Now. How is this possible? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. I don't know. I swear, I don't remember ever saying those things. Something's wrong. It's a setup. She's trying to make me look dangerous, Sonia whispered, loud enough for all of us to hear, her words dripping like venom. He's dangerous. Isn't that what you wanted to see? Daniel's face strained of color, his hands curling into fists on the arms of his chair. He stood abruptly, every nerve coiled with tension. Who are you, Dad? Who are you? I wanted to reach for him, to grab his hand, to make him see me, really see me, but it felt like I was reaching through thick smoke. My heart pounded, the sound deafening in my own ears. I didn't have an answer. I didn't know if I did. Sonia's eyes glimmered with triumph. Maybe this is who you've always been. And maybe I'm just here to remind you. Robert shifted uncomfortably, his brow furrowed. You have to believe him, Daniel. It doesn't make sense. It's a recording, it could be altered. Daniel shook his head violently, stepping back. I don't know what to believe anymore. I can't. A tight, metallic taste filled my mouth, a mix of panic and dread. My chest felt like it was being crushed from all sides, the weight of their eyes like stones pressing me into the floor. Every breath was shallow, desperate. Sonia's hand reached toward Daniel, light as a feather, but the effect was catastrophic. It's okay, she cooed. You deserve to know the truth about him. I'm just showing you what's real. Daniel's gaze flicked to me, then back to her, confusion and fear warring across his face. Is this true? Did you, Dad? I shook my head frantically. No! Listen, Daniel, it's not true. You have to trust me. This is her, she's manipulative. Sonia interrupted softly, almost tenderly. But she's helping you see him. The monster you've never known. I wanted to scream, to tear her smug satisfaction from her face, to force Daniel to see reason. But every protest, every word fell flat. It bounced off the walls, unheard, irrelevant. Daniel's shoulders slumped, tears welling. I can't. I need to get out of here. Before I could react, he stormed past me, his anger and heartbreak propelling him forward. And Sonia, of course, was right behind him, moving with a predatory grace, a shadowed comfort that felt like betrayal incarnate. The door slammed behind them, leaving me in a silence so thick it pressed against my skull. The recording continued to hum, my own voice haunting the empty room, each syllable a reminder that the truth, if it even existed, was no longer mine to command. I sank into the chair, the candlelight flickering against the walls, casting jagged shadows that felt like prison bars. And in that moment, I understood, Sonia hadn't just come to ruin me. She had come to reveal the monster I might have been, or perhaps always was, and she had succeeded without lifting a hand. Days later, I found the envelope on my doorstep, sealed in red wax, with her name scrawled across it. My hands trembled as I picked it up, the faint scent of jasmine clinging to the paper, like a ghost of her presence. I hesitated, knowing that opening it would pull me back into the storm I had thought I'd survived. Inside was a single sheet of heavy paper, the handwriting jagged, deliberate. The words cut through me like shards of glass. I never left, it began. You think I vanished? That I disappeared? No. You drove me away. The man I loved, if you ever truly did, was someone I couldn't recognize. I left because of you, because of the life you forced me into, because of the version of yourself you refused to see. I sank into the nearest chair, the room spinning. Her voice, no, her words, echoed in my mind. I felt the weight of every misstep I'd made, every harsh word, every moment of neglect. She continued, I rebuilt my life under names you'll never hear, a life you'll never touch. But then I learned of him, our son, and I realized there was an opportunity, not for love, not for reconciliation, but for you to see yourself reflected in the chaos I create. Her tone was equal parts venom and sorrow, a contradiction that made my chest ache. He was never truly mine, you see. He was a mirror, a pawn. And you were the player who didn't realize the rules had changed. The room felt colder, the shadows longer. I couldn't move. The silence pressed against my ears until I thought I could hear her footsteps pacing across the floors of memory. She wrote of the painstaking games she had orchestrated, the photograph, the bracelet, the notes, the recording. Each was a lesson in reflection, a way to force me to confront the man I had been, the monster lurking beneath my own self-image. You think you know me, but what you know is just a reflection of your fear. I've waited, watched, and finally I've acted. You still owe me, and you will. This isn't over. This is merely a chapter. I crumpled the letter in my hands, my knuckles white, the paper cutting into my skin. My son's absence was a living wound. Daniel didn't answer my calls. Robert refused to visit. The house was empty, hollow, haunted by her presence even though she was gone. I wanted to rage, to scream into the void, but the words caught in my throat. Her strategy was perfect. She had left only a ghost, yet that ghost was more powerful than any physical presence. Her letter ended with a line that made my blood run cold. Remember, I am always closer than you think. Your past, your choices, your failures, they all belong to me now. I sat there for hours, the candlelight flickering across the walls, shadows stretching and contorting like silent witnesses to my despair. I thought of the photographs she had planted, the recordings, the subtle manipulations that had led my son to doubt me. I realized she hadn't just targeted me, she had weaponized every relationship I cherished. The next morning, the sunlight felt heavy, oppressive, and then, as if orchestrated, another envelope appeared on the doorstep, smaller, simpler, yet unmistakably hers. The handwriting sent a shiver down my spine. See you at his wedding. The words were almost casual, but the weight behind them was devastating. My stomach churned. I didn't know whose wedding she meant, my son's, someone else's, but I knew it would be another stage, another trap, another reflection of my own failures and sins. I sank to the floor, the envelopes like anchors, pulling me into a whirlpool of dread. The air smelled faintly of smoke and iron, remnants of the chaos she had left behind. My mind raced, cycling through every detail, every subtle foreshadowing I had ignored, the notes, the photograph, the bracelet, the recording. Each was a breadcrumb leading me toward her ultimate revelation, and now, toward whatever she planned next. I realized I was unprepared, powerless even, yet compelled to act. She had mastered the art of absence, turning nothing into terror, silence into confession. The house was quiet, but the quiet was an illusion. The letter had left a pulse behind, a rhythm of anticipation that my heart couldn't ignore. I thought of my son, of Robert, and of the way Sonia had used them, not with brute force, but with precision. Every gesture, every whisper, every look had been calculated, and I had walked right into it, blinded by my own arrogance and trust. I felt hollow, yet alert, every nerve alive with the knowledge that nothing had truly ended. Sonia had vanished once again, but her shadow lingered, stretching across my life like a wound that refused to heal. The letter was more than words, it was a blueprint, a promise, a summons, and deep down, in that quiet, agonizing moment I knew she would return. Not as the woman I remembered, not as the one I had loved or feared, but as the architect of my reckoning. She would return, and when she did, the stage would be set, the players ready, and I would finally be forced to confront the truth I had so desperately tried to avoid. I folded the letters carefully, placing them on the mantel where the shadows of the flickering morning sun danced across them. The room felt heavier than ever, and in that stillness, A terrifying certainty settled in my chest. Sonia had rewritten the rules, and I was now a pawn in her enduring, merciless game.